You know, we do think that an attack on one monument is an attack on all.
The Trump administration announced plans to reduce the size of two national monuments in southern Utah, Bears Ears and Grand Staircase Escalante.
Okay, here's number one.
A move that is likely to lead to another legal standoff between the federal government and several tribes that have fought to protect those monuments from mining. In New Mexico, an environmental advocacy organization, New Mexico Wild, is bracing for possible reductions or eliminations of at least 3 other national monuments that were targeted by President Trump during his first term in office. Here's Mark Ellison with New Mexico Wild.
With regard to New Mexico, you know, we do think that an attack on one monument is an attack on all. And so we, again, want to stand together collectively and say this is not acceptable. And so we're very concerned, like, you know, like everybody else, about harm to these national monuments. It took decades and decades of work to establish these.
Several tribes consider the monuments sacred and have fought to protect the ancient cliff dwellings, petroglyphs, and scenic canyons located within them for many years. Former President Bill Clinton established Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument in 1996, and former President Barack Obama created Bears Ears National Monument in 2016 under the Antiquities Act.
It contains the Rio Grande Gorge of these just stunning, deep cliffs down to the Rio Grande itself. Very important to Taos Pueblo, you know, that has been there since time immemorial.
During his first term in office, Trump shrunk the two monuments from 3.2 million acres to 1.2 million, only to have former President Biden restore them to their original sizes. Trump's latest decision reduced the size of the monuments to just under 303,000 acres.
But we believe that it's not legal for a president to make these kinds of reductions. We don't think that the Antiquities Act, as written, authorizes a president to do that. So that will be the basis of lawsuits, I'm sure.
Utah Governor Spencer Cox disagreed. Here's Cox at the Oval Office monument reduction announcement.
And this matters to Utah. We believe that under the Antiquities Act, it's very clear that these monument designations are supposed to be the smallest area possible to protect the antiquities. And these multi-million acre monuments that are bigger than the state of Delaware certainly do not fit that designation.
I think that what we try to remind people is that these are important cultural landscapes. It's not just history; it's today's world as well.
From the homelands of the Pawnee, Otto-Missouri, Kansas, and Omaha peoples, I'm Kevin Abrask with ICT.
Before July 15th, no one could remember the last time a group of Menominee people paddled a traditional dugout canoe down the Menominee River in the heart of their homelands. That all changed when a group of Menominee constructed and completed a dugout canoe on the banks of the Menominee River at the Chappie-Webster Learning Center just north of Menominee, Michigan. On July 15th, following a water ceremony, the canoe went out on her maiden voyage, piloted at first by Don Wilbur and Wayne Sweat, part of the group Protectors of the Menominee River, who spent the past month working on the canoe.
I am beyond excited.
That was Wayne Sweat, one of the primary builders of the dugout canoe.
The ancestors are happy, the river's happy, the fish are happy, the creator's happy, everybody's happy. I'm beyond happy because my work is done.
The group spent 1 month constructing the canoe and had initially planned on taking it out on their annual canoe journey. However, due to extreme weather, the canoe's construction took an additional 2 weeks longer than anticipated.
It was definitely a test because we had to deal with the heat, 100-degree heat. We had to deal with storms. There's times where we had to call a rain day and then heat day.
But Sweat passed the creator's test, The boat floated perfectly. There were no cracks or leaks. It sailed right along.
I feel so relieved. I'm so excited to get her in the water today.
You just heard from Dawn Wilbur, one of the primary creators of the Dugout Canoe.
The ceremony this morning was wonderful, just very, very spiritual. So I'm just feeling very, very grateful for everything and everybody.
The entire process, not just launching the canoe, was history in the making, Wilbur told me. And being out on that boat in the water was a very spiritual and emotional experience, she said.
That's what got me, is the emotion. That's not just looking at her, but feeling her and being able to give her her first drink today before we put her in. So, yeah. I'm going to be thinking about our ancestors. I'm thinking about what they did, how much time that they would put into stuff like this, and how they would sacrifice themselves, because a canoe is communal. When it's made, it doesn't take ownership. It's for everybody to use in the community. So it wasn't just like yours or mine. That's the purpose of it. So.
Elders and children alike gathered to watch the canoe as it made its maiden voyage around the river. Children played in the water, and elders watched from the shore. After their turn, community members were invited to go out and paddle around the river.
Okay, check your balance. All of the love, all of the gratitude, all of the giving, all of the sharing, everybody, and just everything that everybody has done for us. So, yeah, Natanaway Mackinook, our relatives.
Despite air quality alerts from wildfires in Ontario, the group was still able to take the canoe out amidst hazy orange skies. Later this year, they hope to take the canoe out for wild rice harvesting. For ICT, from Menominee Homelands, I'm Amelia Schaefer.
Just north of downtown Pine Ridge, home of the Oglala Lakota Nation, is a new art center with a legacy that goes back to the 1960s. Tawa Dushano is its executive director.
This new space had been probably at least 20 years in the making in terms of discussions and planning, because as collections grew to where we are now with between 12 and 13,000 pieces in our permanent collection, they were not living in an adequate environment. We were in a historic building called Drexel Hall, which is the three-story brick building on campus, constructed in 1888. A fairly stable environment, but not ideal for long-term, preservation and storage for what we view as all of our relatives in the collection. We view all of our pieces as living beings, and it was hard to caretake them appropriately without adding more issues to our HVAC environment with smudging and risk of pests and those things. So in this new space, we have a beautiful compact storage space that we are able to house everything in. So all the relatives, in a sense, are in one big room together now.
My name is Christopher Bordeaux. I go by Galen LaRush as my artist name. I am Sichangu, Rosebud too, and I'm from Rosebud, but been living here in Pine Ridge for 30-some years. So I always tell everybody I'm born again Ogallala. And I do photography as my art. Most of my stuff has been landscape. That's what everybody knows me for doing. But this year I thought I'd do just one shot. And this one is the moon with I don't even know what planet that is. Everybody says a star, but it's a planet. One of my brother-in-laws, he's an artist. And what first thing he saw it, he said, "What I see in your art is Uchimakau, is Mother Earth." He said, when I look at the stuff you do, whether it's landscape or whether it's clouds, he said, I feel connected more to the earth when I look at your stuff. And he said, I'm pretty sure people feel like that.
From the beginning, we've always been open for entry in a non-juried show to any federally tribally enrolled artist. So we've always had a diverse array of artists enter this show. And so this year is the biggest show to date. We have 220 pieces by 93 artists entering. And so the show will be up. We always open the first Saturday in June, and we'll close the show shortly before Swaya. That's Indian Market in Santa Fe. So the show will be open through August 9th.
Ducheneau explains that the Chatku Art Center is part of Mahpialuta, formerly Red Cloud Indian School. It began over 135 years ago by Catholic Jesuits as Holy Rosary Mission. It's an economic force for creativity and education.
Well, this is the only show of the year that supports artists with being able to sell their works. The inception of the gift shop, which began to emerge in the late 80s and really grew and grew through the 90s, 2000s, is that all of the pieces in the gift shop, they're also online, whether that be a sticker, T-shirt, parfleche, quill work, beadwork. All of those pieces are purchased directly from artists on the spot with a low markup. So artists understand what it means for us to be able to say we're an economic engine for the community, because our relationships with artists are first and foremost not having, say, 100% markup. And so that enables us to buy more frequently from families. So we support anywhere from 250 to 300 families a year on a regular basis, be they, families who are all making start bolts together and things like that. So we're really proud of that relationship that we have with our artists in the community.
For ICT from the homelands of the Oglala Lakota, I'm Shirley Snavy.
Betsy Fore is from the Turtle Mountain Chippewa tribe. She is a CEO and serial entrepreneur turned investor, author, and nonprofit co-founder. She is also the first known Native American woman to raise millions in venture capital funding. Betsy, thank you so much for joining the ICT Newscast today.
Thank you, Polly. I'm so excited to be here.
Can you tell us a little bit about your amazing and incredible career and the businesses that you have started? It's honestly so amazing to hear about all of your successful ventures.
I lived in a world where it was almost like childlike wonder. I didn't want to grow up. So when I became a toy inventor, it made complete sense at the time. I came up with toys for Mattel, for Hasbro, for Spin Master, but I actually developed over 100 products and only a few of those made it to market. So it taught me very early on how to fail fast, how to approach each idea with the same enthusiasm. I never traveled abroad before other than the Peace Gardens, in Canada, next to our reservation there. But I had heard about someone who was building the next like Pokemon of the UK at the time. And I thought, I'm just going to fly out there and figure out if I can prove to him that I could build a physical toy franchise based on his digital brand called Mashi Monsters. Well, he actually wound up becoming the founder of Calm, the meditation app. This was just like a dream, like moving to a foreign country, away from community, away from family, and just like figuring it out. But also is like someone who didn't grow up with tech really, or like startups, and learn from Michael and everything that he had built at Mashi Monsters. It then gave me sort of the confidence and the go ahead to found my first company. It was the first Fitbit for dogs. And I thought, I've got a Fitbit for myself. Why don't I have one for my dog? The way that I had gotten my first funding, because, I didn't have that kind of friends and family around, or even think at the time like somebody would pay me to build my idea, right? I actually got a $50K grant and then went on to raise tens of millions eventually for my second company, Tiny Organics, which I built for my first son. I thought the greatest gift I could give him outside of my love was a love of vegetables from the very first bites. And so then my cousin, Chef Corey Azure of our tribe, invented the first baby food recipe recipe on the market through Tiny Organics called Three Sisters. And that was definitely a career highlight for me. But I built that company in the first 2 years to over 13 million in revenue, and then became, as you mentioned earlier, the first Native American to be noted as to raise a Series A round of funding. And I just thought there has to be many, many more Native founders to come, which leads us to Natives Rising. We are one of the largest communities of Native technologists and founders, with our members representing over 100 tribes nationwide. My incredible co-founder, Danielle Forward, who is Pomo, when her and I joined forces, I had said, at Powwow together one year, what if we did this also for Native founders and build a community of Native founders, right, to support each other. And so that's just been such a labor of love and so fulfilling, getting to do that legacy work with her. I then went on to found my venture capital fund after that to bring you all the way up to today, Volley. So that's kind of a long story there.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us, because it is just so incredible how it sort of continued to shift and change and grow as you continued on in your career. And there were just so many different paths. And I think it's just incredible to hear the story from you. And I'm also curious now, how you got interested in venture capital. I know that there are a lot of Native business owners who aren't sure about venture capital, who may not even know that that's an option for them. And so I'm curious about, your experience also as an investor and in the space of venture capital.
Yes, absolutely. Because historically, when you look around, our communities didn't have access to venture capital, or you already have to have had a certain level of wealth, I guess. That so it kind of kept everyone out of that inner circle. And for me, I had an investor in Tiny Organics, X Factor Ventures. We've actually backed over 3% of every female-led seed round in the nation, and they had tapped me for their next fund that they were raising, because the premise of X Factor was to be a Series A and beyond female founder who's then backing the next generation of female founders. And so it's because of Chip Hazard and Anna Palmer, who founded X Factor Ventures, that I was able to become an investor, actually, and start writing checks into female founders, including Native female founders, through that fund. And then, that got me realizing that instead of being like I had been for the previous 2 decades, building one company with a singular focus, to create this ripple in this life and this one impact, it was like I could actually have a even greater ripple if I were able to empower other founders, right, in doing this work, and to help them from my learnings, and things that I had to learn, honestly, the hard way, right? And I wanted to let them know, I've walked in your moccasins, I've done this work, and I'm here to help you, and let's do it together. We've actually dedicated a portion of our equity, or our carry, to go directly back to tribal communities, mainly through tribal colleges, and here nationwide. And so we feel that's a way that we can really honor our ancestors and really the generational impact that we plan on creating through this fund, by investing in solutions for the next 7 generations.
Betsy, thank you so much for joining the ICT Newscast, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. I really appreciate it.
Miigwech. Thank you, Polly.
Hello, friends, relatives, and fellow sports fanatics. Welcome back to ICT's Unnamed Sports Chat with Brent Cahwee. I'm Colby Kickingwoman. Thanks for joining me today, Brent.
Always good to be here, Colby.
Yeah, so big recent news was Gavin McKenna was drafted number 1 overall in the NHL draft, the second Indigenous player to be selected number 1 overall. What did you think of that selection? What kind of future do you see for him in the National Hockey League?
I think this is something that, was a momentous occasion for Indian country. He's the second Native American First Nations athlete to be drafted number 1. But in the hockey world, this was not unexpected. Since the age of 16, Gavin's been projected as the number 1 overall pick. So it was really great to see it come to fruition. He's a talented player. He's, obviously the number 1 pick, but for sure, it was just a huge thing for the First Nations community and the Canadians.
Yeah, I thought it was super cool too that, obviously he had his family there, but to see them all in, traditional vests, and he was wearing a couple of pins one for his clan, which I think was like a wolf clan pin. And then they were also orange for, remembering residential school survivors and children who got caught up in those schools up north. It'll be, yeah, like you said, he's been a big prospect for a while now. And I think hockey is one of those sports where it takes a couple of years to kind of, find your legs, find the speed of the game. And, Connor Bedard was, a renowned pick coming up, number one pick also, still kind of finding his footing. I think Leo Carlson for the Anaheim Ducks is in his second or third year, still kind of increasing. So it's going to be really exciting to see, how he kind of transforms and gets his legs, if you will.
Right. Yeah, that was great to see. It was stated that his sister made those pins for him, and like you see, to see that representation on a national stage, on a national platform. Even the ESPN interviewers brought his side of his Indigenous heritage up, and he was proudly to represent. So for sure, that was an awesome thing to see. But yeah, anytime a number one pick is chosen, they're not, that from the fans' perspective, they're expected to solve our problems right away, right? But from the franchise perspective, this is an investment. This is something we're going to take time with. We're going to develop it. We're going to work on things he needs to work on. We're going to give him time. We're going to give him space, and he'll be the face of the franchise in the near future. But certainly, I'm looking forward to see how his career will unfold.
Yeah, certainly. And, speaking of across all sports and Native youth looking up to folks, World Cup's going on, but we're talking American football. Shiaz Pete is going to be reporting to training camps here at the end of July for the Dallas Cowboys. Have you heard anything about how his offseason's been going?
The OTAs have been going on this month, and they'll head back again in a few weeks for more OTAs. I think there's 92, 93 players on the roster right now. They'll be able to carry that into the first few games of preseason football. But by the end of the last preseason football game, they'll have to cut that down to the 53-man roster. He's got a real good chance. Obviously, he's undrafted. There are players they're bringing in and sending out. So, this is a fluid process for him. I think the Dallas Cowboys really like what they see in him, not just from an athletic standpoint, but from a professional athlete standpoint. He's got a good image. He's got a good way he carries himself. So, those are things that are just as important in professional sports as being a number one pick.
And then in the NBA, WNBA, there was some news regarding Alyssa Peely. What's the latest on that?
Yeah, Alyssa Peely recently signed a developmental contract with the Los Angeles Sparks, and she signed that and she recently participated in her first game with the Sparks, where she was able to come off the bench for 12 minutes, played some great roles. She had a couple of baskets, 5 rebounds, a couple of assists. She was really instrumental in that win over the Indiana Fever. So it's good to see her back in the WNBA. It's good to see her back on the court. I know she had some injuries she was fighting through. I think they had planned to sign her in June because she was practicing with the team in June, but she was still going through the recovery of the injury that she was going through.
And lastly, Anthony Siegler was called up by the Boston Red Sox and has been slashing pretty well. I think the Red Sox, they're a little bit further back in the division, but the AL is kind of weak this year, and they're 3 or 4 games back in the wild card. Have you had a chance to watch him play at all?
Oh yeah, I've been glued to the TV since he came on the 18 games ago with the Red Sox, and it's been great to see him get that second chance. You certainly want to earn it for sure, and you'd hate to see anybody get injured and a spot opens up for you. You don't want to walk into it that way, but he certainly take advantage of that opportunity that came for him as one of the Red Sox players had to go on the IR. And so he's been stepping it up for the Red Sox to become their leadoff hitter now. And that just says a lot about all the work that he's put in and working his game. Everybody knows him through the minor leagues as a switch hitter, switch thrower. He's a utility infield, outfield, played catcher in high school. Even played some pitching in high school, left and right. So he's just a great all-around type of utility type player. And for him to, we know he was with the Brewers last year for a few games and then through the playoffs. And he had an opportunity there, but it just didn't work out. But, as we come to find out, they weren't allowing him to switch hit with the Brewers. But once he got with the minor leagues with the Red Sox, they were allowing him and growing that switch hitting. And that really kind of opened up his hitting, opened up his game, and more importantly, opened up his confidence. And that's what we're seeing right now is that confidence come through.
Thanks, as always, Brent, for joining me. Always love chatting sports with you.
All right. We'll see you next time.
I'm Miles Morso, Métis Nation, from the Chippewas of Kettle Stony Point 55th Annual Powwow, where a young First Nations woman is taking food sovereignty on the Powwow Trail.
Buju, Ajage Gitchagamic Nadijna Kaz, Bekajanong Nadunjaba, Mang Nadodam, Anishinaabe Kwe Nindao. Buju, my English name is Chloe White Delary. I am from Walpole Island First Nation, and this is my booth. My business, I run it with my mom, and our business name is called Odeminig Cafe. And so we like to incorporate things that our ancestors would have ate. So for example, today we have smoked fish sandwiches, wild rice and berries. What else do we have? Oh, my mom, she invented raspberry sweetgrass iced tea. We have strawberry drink. We invented Anishinaabe protein power balls. We're trying to have a cultural resurgence through food.
I'm Miles Morso, Métis Nation, ICT.